Donald Trump's legal team, Rudy Giuliani, have asserted a lot of things. They've presented some evidence at a recent press conference, and they're alleging what appears to be a centralized conspiracy, a plot to help Joe Biden. I don't know about all that, but I can tell you this. My brain hurts for one simple reason. There is evidence of fraud. There is evidence of impropriety. There is evidence that something happened in some places. But the mainstream media ignores it, says there's no evidence, mocks and ridicules Trump's legal team, and I just want to know what happened. Maybe it's not widespread, systemic voter fraud that changed the election. Maybe Rudy Giuliani has truly lost the plot, and there's no centralized plan of sorts, but there is evidence that weird stuff happened. And I just want the answers, man, but you're not going to get it. Because in this world, you either get, we're the establishment and they're all crazy, ignore them. And with Giuliani, you get centralized, widespread fraud. To be fair, I think it is a little over the top, some of the things that Giuliani and some of Trump's legal team have pointed out. But if we go through the legal process, we can deal with any hyperbolic or eccentric claims while dealing with the fact that Giuliani did present evidence. And the media just keeps qualifying this by saying, well, it's not widespread evidence. Look, I don't know what's happening. Maybe it really is Giuliani and Trump trying to just subvert the election. But then how do you account for the irregularities, the clerical errors across the board, the historic recount margins Trump has just gained? I'm sorry, man. I'm looking at too many coincidences to just be like, let's ignore this. In Michigan, you had 71% of the voter books unbalanced, meaning there were the number of signatures to votes not in sync. This resulted in two Republicans saying they don't want to certify, then they certified. Now they're saying they don't want to certify. In Georgia, they do a recount. And in 3 different counties, they discover a bunch of ballots that were never counted, which is unprecedented. All of these different outlets are saying a recount can only find a few hundred. They found 1,400. Now Giuliani has got more affidavits. We've got affidavits coming out of Georgia where one dude says he sees a whole bunch of uniform ballots that look machine printed. Do we ignore this? You don't have to think Giuliani is the smartest guy in the world, and you don't have to like him for you to be like, media, do your job. They're not. They're mocking, berating, belittling. Now, listen, the difficulty here is that in order to fact check to the best of my abilities, I often cross-reference different outlets and try and figure out what their sources are. But when so many outlets are ignoring and lying, I don't have them as a resource for fact checking. So some things, it's just going to be a he said, she said. That's sad reality. And to be fair, maybe I need to start hiring some investigative reporters to do the actual work and figure out, because the media is letting us down. And I'll take that one. Yeah, I should probably do that. But right now, when you have an affidavit, multiple affidavits, when you have hard evidence, when you have whistleblowers, like a circumstantial evidence, okay, then perhaps the media needs to be a bit more honest about what's going on and say something as simple as this. While Giuliani did present evidence of voter fraud in the form of an affidavit from a poll watcher, we have not yet reached the point where we can definitively say one way or another. That's it. When you have a smoke alarm going off, that's circumstantial evidence. It's not the fire itself. And that means someone's got to go and check the building. Why is the media and the Democratic Party so adamant to ignore what we've seen so far? Probably because Giuliani might be right, or because they're just arrogant and they're elitists, think they're smarter than you and they want to waste our time. I don't know what to tell you, man. Let's read the news, see what Giuliani is alleging, and then I want to show you how the media is playing this. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate. If you would like to support my work, there are many ways you can give, but the best thing you can do is share this video. Why? I am exasperated. Look, I can show you all of the mainstream media sources in the world that are misleading at best and outright wrong at worst. And if that's what you read, I mean, I'm talking to my friends and they're like, I'm not hearing anything about this. I said, did you hear what's going on in Wayne County, Michigan? This is crazy. You know, they don't want to certify, then they want to certify. I've not heard this. I just heard Joe Biden won. Yeah, because the media is not giving us an overview of what's really happening. So I'm not here to say Trump won. I'm not here to say Biden won. I'm just here to say I looked at all the sources. It's getting crazy out there. And if you think that my inability to actually draw a hard conclusion is beneficial to people because maybe that's what they need right now, then please consider sharing this video. Don't forget, like, subscribe, share, notification bell, all that stuff. Here's the first story from the Daily Caller, and I chose this one because it's very light and very simple. Enough to overturn any election. Trump campaign holds press conference laying out their evidence of voter fraud. President Donald Trump's legal team held a press conference Thursday explaining the alleged evidence of voter fraud they believe would have impacted the results of the 2020 presidential election. The press conference was led by Trump lawyer Rudy Giuliani, who is joined by Trump campaign lawyer Jenna Ellis, lawyer Sidney Powell, and lawyer Joe DiGenova. Giuliani explained that they believe there is direct evidence to show there was voter fraud in the presidential election. Giuliani specifically mentioned Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Georgia throughout the presser. In the presser, Giuliani said the evidence they have is enough to overturn any election. The recount in Georgia will tell us nothing because these fraudulent ballots will just be counted again. Giuliani said about the recount effort in the state of Georgia. Trump's lawsuits thus far do not allege voter fraud on a large enough scale to flip a state. Now, the important thing is, my understanding, Giuliani, Trump's legal team, they have alleged a lot of fraud. I think only one of their suits actually had to deal with fraud. For the most part, it's constitutional arguments. Meaning, in Pennsylvania specifically, they're saying that people were not treated equally as to how they voted, and thus some people had their rights deprived. That's an attempt to get an injunction on certification. Now, many people have said, you've lost 25 lawsuits, Trump. Giuliani corrected this individual at the press conference, saying, those are not our lawsuits. Giuliani said, we have 3 lawsuits right now. Those are other people who have filed. That's it. And I don't know about the exact numbers, but yes, it's true. Many non-Trump affiliated people have filed lawsuits challenging the results of the election. They say during the presser, Giuliani also said there is a pattern in the voting data that suggests a plan from a centralized place to commit voter fraud in Democrat-run cities. Giuliani also said the Trump campaign will likely bring a lawsuit to Arizona. Just hours before the press conference, Trump's campaign withdrew a lawsuit trying to stop the state of Michigan from certifying its election results Thursday, Giuliani said in a Thursday statement. So, if you followed my earlier segment about Michigan, they withdrew their lawsuit because already 2 state canvassers refused to certify. They then, I guess, agreed to certify, but then later claimed they were under duress and they were being threatened and they were assured there would be an audit. So now they're trying to rescind their certification. But there's no legal mechanism in the Michigan system other than suppose the courts. So I don't know what's going to happen there, but it's now got to go to the state board, which is also my understanding, 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and very well may be the 2 Republicans at the state level say, we will not certify Michigan's results because of the threats that came in Wayne County, and we are not confident. Perhaps not. A centralized plan, Giuliani says. Maybe he's right, but this is getting just crazy. You know, I'll tell you this. If the media was honest and fair, I absolutely would think Giuliani was a crazy man who's lost his mind. And he can come out and say, there's a Democrat plot, it's centralized, they're doing all these things. And I'd be like, dude, please. Occam's razor, simple solutions. Here's the problem. Rudy Giuliani claims Trump campaign has found nationwide Democrat voter fraud conspiracy plot. Claims made by campaign continue to fail in court. Well, I don't think he was that direct about it. But if you want to frame it that way to make it look like he's a crackpot, perhaps that's what their plan is. But I will say, of course, Giuliani did say it seems to be from a centralized plan. I don't know if he specifically said it was from Democrats. When Giuliani was asked in the press conference, what is Joe Biden's involvement, Giuliani said, I don't know what Joe Biden knows or doesn't know. And I'm not trying to be cute, like, playing some game. From a legal perspective, I don't know what Joe Biden does or doesn't know. Giuliani said that maybe Joe Biden is just kind of being, pushed along as other people are dealing with this. So not necessarily a Democrat voter fraud conspiracy plot, but thanks Boston Herald for giving us that point of view. In the end, the media has not been taking this seriously. And you've got 73 or so million people, maybe more now, who are very concerned about what we are hearing. Instead, what do we get? We get told to shut up. We get told it's unfounded, unsubstantiated, no evidence, but the things we see cannot just be thrown away. You have 5 or 6 affidavits in Georgia where even Democrats said, this looks weird. What they're apparently alleging with the Georgia recount is that there were a bunch of ballots that were uniform and clean with no creases that were all for Joe Biden. And it looked like it was machine printed. Those are actual allegations from sworn statements. In fact, in one affidavit, the reason they're not releasing too many of these, but they've released some, is because the lawyers for the Trump campaign got threatened into quitting. The two Republicans in Michigan who said this looks weird got threatened and harassed. And so they said, fine, we'll certify. It's very obvious. Trump supporters and the people who are engaging in this fight need to stop being scared. You know, it's really crazy. I love when you actually have some kind of crazy conspiracy and you're worried about like the man or the government or some like secret agent. Am I supposed to be worried about some leftist Antifa types? Because they are apparently. Just chill, dude. Do what you have to do because, look, it is better to live on your feet. It is better to die on your feet than live on your knees, right? So the media has been ignoring and insulting and refusing to acknowledge what's really happening. And that makes me think, you know what? If they're not going to take this seriously, then I have no choice but to say I have to take Rudy Giuliani and all his claims seriously as well. You come out with an affidavit, okay, and you risk your life from actual threats. And these are regular people, so that I understand why they're scared. In some of these redacted documents I've reviewed, the redactions are easily removed. No joke. So even when they're like, okay, you can release this, just redact my information, it's still possible to go into the source, you can look at the source of the actual documents online, and it bypasses the redactions. So people are scared. Think about how many people were scared and would not admit they voted for Trump. Now think about how many people may have witnessed something and they're scared. You witness a truck pull up. There was one woman, I think it was in Nevada. She said a van pulled up and then people pulled out boxes of ballots and she was like, these are ballots. She went on Laura Ingraham, disguised her voice and silhouetted her appearance because she's scared. Think about how many people were too scared to even say they voted for Trump. Now imagine you volunteered. You always volunteer for election watching or for tabulation and you're noticing something weird going on. You get scared. I don't want to say anything. I don't want them coming after me because, well, they might. But I'll tell you this. If you're listening, and you're someone who's witnessed this, and you have actually seen evidence, or you are a witness, or you could swear to it, that these things happened, that fraud happened, or impropriety, you need to speak up now, or you are condemning your children to this system. What world will you leave behind? People need to stop worrying about themselves for just a little bit. I know. You have to secure your own face mask before securing the mask of the person sitting next to you. But right now, more than ever, we need people to be brave. I wish people were more courageous. I really do. And I understand why many aren't. But if you witness something, speak up now. And you know what? Otherwise, I can only make one assumption. That that's not really that bad, that we've seen the worst of it, that it's not systemic, that it's only these instances, and there is a higher proportion this time around, and maybe it won't change the results. Okay, maybe that's it, and I'll absolutely accept that. I just want a fair take on what's going on, not some shock, insane garbage. The Daily Mail's been doing the worst of it. Did you watch? Actually, I'm sorry. The Daily Mail did not do the worst of it. The Daily Beast did. But the Daily Mail says, did you all watch My Cousin Vinny? Sweating Rudy Giuliani presents his evidence for mass voting fraud at bizarre press conference, claiming it's as frequent as getting beaten up at a Philadelphia Eagles game as hair dye runs down his face. Gotta love it when King 5 won't shut up. Keeps playing audio. Anyway, here's where it gets fun. The Daily Beast. Giuliani's hair dye streaks down face after My Cousin Vinny performance, melting down. It's one of my favorite law movies, Trump's lawyer said, before acting out a scene from the 1992 film as evidence of voter fraud in the 2020 election. No, he didn't. He did make reference to the scene in My Cousin Vinny where he's like, how many fingers am I holding up? But he didn't present it as evidence of voter fraud. The media is not taking it seriously. They're lying about what's happening, and they're going after anybody who brings it up. Here's Vice. YouTube is cashing in on Trump's election conspiracy during Giuliani live stream. Conspiracy theorists from around the world are making direct payments to YouTube to promote their unhinged and unfounded theories. Heaven forbid anybody talk about what's really going on and wants a real answer. Well, let me give you some real answers. Over at King 5, they say, claims about cited and election servers in Germany are false. All parties involved, plus a federal agency, said the claims of election tampering are false. Do I just blindly believe King 5? Absolutely not. When you don't take these claims seriously, you insult, belittle, mock, or lie, I can't trust you later on when you try to debunk these things. I can, however, say this one, in my opinion, seems to be more accurate. They say, fact-checking regarding U.S. elections. Following several erroneous statements that have been published in digital and social media, cited would like to clarify the following. The technologies implemented by cited in the U.S. are both hosted and managed within the U.S. by a local subsidiary, SOE Software, based in Tampa, Florida. We do not tabulate, tally, or count votes in the U.S. We do not provide voting machines in the U.S. We did not provide online voting to U.S. jurisdictions for U.S. elections. We do not have servers or offices in Frankfurt. The U.S. Army has not seized anything from cited in Barcelona, Frankfurt, or anywhere else. We are not owned by George Soros and have never been connected to him. We are not tied to Smartmatic, SGO, Dominion, or Indra. We have no ties with Russia either. I like how they add that last one for good measure. This is important because Sidney Powell at the press conference said that U.S. votes were being tabulated or stored in another country. Well, cited is saying that's not true, but I do want to say something interesting. They say, we do not tabulate, tally, or count votes in the U.S. Does that mean you tabulate, tally, or count votes in other countries? You see the problem here? We do not provide voting machines in the U.S. That makes sense. We do not provide online voting to U.S. jurisdictions for the U.S. elections. Okay. Sounds to me like that's the best we have so far. However, if someone comes out and claims that there's foreign servers, this is why I ignore, you might notice a lot of people are like, Tim, why don't you cover this thing or that thing? You can't verify it, okay? Y'all can talk about what you want to talk about. I'm here to say, is it true or is it false? And I'll tell you what is true. Rudy Giuliani presented an affidavit, and Daily Mail really mocks him over this. They say, he read a single affidavit of Jesse Jacob alleging fraud at the Detroit Center where votes were counted. A judge found the claims, while serious, were generalized and had no date, location, frequency, or names of employees. But it was the only one he shared. We have 100 more of these. I can't show them to you. He said it was because people who filled them out would be harassed. The American people are entitled to know this. You don't have a right to keep it from them, he lectured the press. If you count the lawful votes, Trump won Wisconsin by a good margin. I understand the threats, but the other point, there is evidence. It is mostly circumstantial. We have some signs or indications of real impropriety, and we should absolutely investigate. The media won't take it seriously, however. They just make it seem like you only have one sworn affidavit. There's so many that have come out. So many. Now, I will say, I disagree with Giuliani and Trump's legal team in one capacity. These people who have signed sworn affidavits need to be public now. I am not interested in playing games with either side of this conflict. I personally don't like Joe Biden. I don't want him to win. He's already stacking the deck with corporate lobbyists, and we're gonna be at war in a month, not even. Okay, so I want Trump to win, but I tell you this. They talk about releasing the Kraken. Well, release it already. I'm not interested in waiting around for you to release the Kraken and then nothing happens. They're talking about software being made in Venezuela, being used by Hugo Chavez, all of these things. And it's like, okay, let's see the evidence. Now, to be fair, what Giuliani has claimed is that he can't just come out and dump all this evidence. The courts would get mad at him. He's got to present them properly through the courts. And that makes sense. It's true. He's got to go to court and he's got to say, here's our evidence. If he releases it all up front, there's two problems with that. For one, the judge might get mad because he's effectively, tainting the case, going out in the media, changing public opinion, making a spectacle of the courts and the impending proceedings. And more importantly, he would be tipping off who he's going up against. In court, you don't do this. There was a lawsuit between two YouTubers, and I'll leave. It was Sargon Akkad, another person who I'm not going to name. And Sargon, you may be familiar with him. He's a personality. Kept his mouth shut. Didn't talk about what he was doing or what his plans were, and it was the right move. He ended up winning, and then he won again. when he went after court fees. So Sargon knew the right move. When it comes to Giuliani, especially something dealing with, we're dealing with a presidential election, he absolutely needs to keep all his cards close to the vest, close to the chest, whichever one. You get the point. He can't just go around and be like, look at all this evidence, because then people are going to know what to try and cover up or clean up. And that's just not the way you're going to go about it in court. The media wants everything now. Maybe there isn't anything. Maybe Giuliani is just flailing his arms. So that's why I said, release the Kraken sounds an awful lot like trust the plan. You get the evidence, you put it out. I'll hear it. I'll report on it. I'm waiting. I talked about, Jesse Jacob, the affidavit you've released. I've read through some of the affidavits from Georgia. I'm very, very interested to see what we have here. And I want to know why these things happen. And I want answers. Well, the media's not going to give it to us. Where's the FBI? Apparently, we're not getting an FBI statement from anybody. Even Giuliani called this out. The media is mocking us and belittling us. And so then what am I supposed to do? I guess the only thing I can do is say, all right, if you won't take it seriously and you're trying to tell me it's wrong and you're ignoring it, I'm going to trust Giuliani on this one. I'd say maybe there really is something going on, because the media just will not give us a fair shake on whatever this is. And let me show you something I find really interesting. Josh Jordan tweeted something that is an indication that there's something off, something strange. He says 2 weeks later, how much Trump overperformed the Real Clear Politics averages, nationally 3.2. But take a look at this. In Ohio, he overperformed by 7. In Wisconsin, 6.1. In Texas, 4.4. You can see the numbers go down. And then North Carolina, Arizona, Nevada, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Minnesota are where Trump underperformed in the polls, or it was insignificant. And many people have pointed this out, saying, isn't it weird that the specific states that Donald Trump needed to win, Pennsylvania notably, the polls were correct. But in other states, Texas, Ohio is interesting as well. In other states, he overperformed. He did need Ohio, so maybe it's not really a correlation or a causation. Maybe people are just looking at this and then seeing what they want to see. But Pennsylvania, Georgia, Nevada, and Arizona all lumped together where the polls were actually pretty spot on seems, I don't know, too perfect. I'll tell you this. It seems anomalous, not evidence enough for me to consider anything. If someone came to me and said, look at this, I'd be like, well, sometimes these things happen. But when you have like 50 different moments where you keep saying these things happen, so eventually I'm going to have to ask you a question. How many coincidences until you've won the lottery? Because I think it's like 5 or 6, right? How many numbers? 5 numbers? I don't play the lottery. But you get the point. A coincidence, it happens. A couple of them, they can happen too. But when we have multiple sworn affidavits in many different places, when you have the changing of the rules and mass mail-in voting, and it's like the rules were all changed at the last minute. You've got ballots that were counted that people never requested. So absentee ballots got counted. Nobody requested them. Those things have to be investigated, because at a certain point, these things add up and you have to ask yourself, pick one: conspiracy theorist, coincidence theorist. That's the two sides, I suppose. Typically, I would say a coincidence theorist, man. If sometimes people in the lottery, it happens. In this instance, we're dealing with politics, power. We're dealing with people who changed the rules with mail-in voting, earlier before the election. That's a unilateral change that people were opposing. The Republicans and Democrats are at odds. It is a fight over political power. So at this point, I'm less inclined to assume that there is a coincidence going on over and over and over again. So that leaves us with what? A conspiracy? I got to be honest. I'm not even entirely convinced of that. I think maybe some people here and there maybe had plans and conspired in some ways. If we're talking about Georgia and a bunch of ballots being printed out that looked really weird, it doesn't have to be a national Democrat coordinated event. In fact, it could be foreign influence. I will say it's very fascinating that Georgia and Arizona haven't voted Democrat since like 92, and they flip. Now we've got these claims and we've got these sworn statements. A regular American, many of them, stepped forward and signed their names to a document saying, I believe I witnessed fraud. I respect those people. They may be liars, but we'll go through the process to make sure, because we don't want to leave, loose ends. We want to make sure that we tie this up and everything's done. But you know what? I don't know what's going to happen. I've been talking to a lot of people about what they think is going to happen. And ever since things have started picking up this week, people have been saying a lot of things like, it's starting to feel like something is happening. It's not just Joe Biden winning and Trump throwing a fit. No, something else is happening. Like, Trump might actually win this. I don't know what to expect. Maybe he does. Maybe he doesn't. But I wonder why it is that the media has become so obvious in their lies. That's the crazy thing. Maybe it's because they can't let people know there actually is evidence, So they just keep saying no evidence, none at all. And then Giuliani does his press conference, and they make fun of him, they insult him, and they don't take his statements seriously in any capacity. They just say, look at his hair dye. He's crazy. He's melting down. My cousin Vinny, what a nut. Sure. Maybe that's it. Maybe he really is crazy. Maybe not. I don't know. But I don't trust the media because they lied about Trump withdrawing his. Look at this. They lied and they said the other day that Trump withdrew his claim about 700,000 votes being improper. That's not true at all. It's like they just lie. Now they come out and they say no evidence over and over again. It's like, what's really crazy? These two Republicans in Michigan who refused to certify said it was because of the unbalanced books. I didn't even know the books were unbalanced. I didn't know anything about that. I've been focused on these affidavits for the most part, and the whistleblower from USPS. There are affidavits of people saying they were instructed to backdate ballots. Wow. Let alone some of these other claims. So maybe. But I don't think we're going to get a fair shake from the media. And that's why I think we are headed towards it is getting dire. It is getting bad. Because if we can't trust the media, then the only thing we can say is pick which one's true. If Trump says there's fraud, well, the media is lying and another lying, so therefore Trump must be telling the truth, right? Well, that's what the media gets for lying. They could have taken this seriously. They could have said, there's fraud. We don't know how widespread it is. We should definitely look into it. Our curious journalists will check these stories out. They didn't. We'll see what this means and what this leads to. Honestly, I have no idea, but something's happening. It's getting weird. And I don't think people are going to be satisfied with the results. The left won't. If Trump wins, the right won't if Biden wins. And then I hope you've taken care of you've prepared to the best of your abilities in some capacity for the unrest that may come. I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. over at youtube.com/TimCastNews. It is a different channel, and I will see you all then.